I am.
All right, everybody ready? Okay, we're going to get started. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Law, I wish to state that on March the 7th, 2014, the notice of this meeting of the Upper Township Committee was posted on the official Township Bulletin Board, mailed to the Cape County Gazette, the Atlantic City Press, the Ocean City Sentinel Ledger, the Herald Times, and filed with the Township Clerk. Tonight's meeting is being video recorded up until the closed session portion of the meeting, and will be available on UTTV, now Channel 97, and on the Upper Township website. I hereby direct that this announcement made a part of the minutes of this meeting. We'd ask all rise to the salute to the flag. I would also ask that you remain standing after the salute to the flag, so that when we have a moment of silence in memory of Renee Straka, who served on the planning board for 20 years, and she passed away about a week ago. So after the Pledge of Allegiance, please remain standing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr? Here. Mr. Coggins?
Here.
Mr. Insera? Yes. Mr. Young? Mr. Palumbo?
Here.
All members are present.
Yeah, and I just want to add that we'll be honoring Renee with a resolution later in the meeting. We'll kind of tell you a little bit of the time that she dedicated to the township as well, so. All right, so would someone like to make approval of the minutes, both the regular and the closed session from February 24th?
Motion. Second.
Is there any corrections, omissions, deletions that anyone's aware of? Okay, hearing none. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay, I think what we'll do is, let's just shuttle around. We have Leon here this evening, so we'll do the report of the governing body members after we introduce our budget 2014, and then so that way Leon can go, and then we'll proceed with the meeting. So at this time, I guess, first of all, does anybody on the committee have any further comments to the budget?
Yes, sir.
Just for the public's edification, we will be introducing the budget tonight. We'll have a public hearing in our first meeting in April, which is
April 14th.
April 14th. And so that will be the night that we'll have a public hearing. You're certainly, if you wish to deliver us some sort of statement written, we'll take that into consideration as well. Leon, do you have anything to add before we introduce the budget, or in case there's any questions?
When you get ready to introduce it, then I'll do what the procedure is, where we stand and stuff like that.
Okay. So, Barbara, would you read for us?
Well, the first thing is we have to do the resolution of the ordinance to exceed the cap.
Yes.
Then we do the budget.
Okay.
So we have the introduction and first reading of ordinance number 7, 2014, calendar year 2014 ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank.
Let me explain that real quick, because this is a boilerplate that the state requires you to do, and the first thing it says is that you're exceeding something. You're not exceeding anything. You're almost $947,000 under the cap. The last half of that statement.
Can you repeat that again, just for the public?
You're $947,000 under what you're allowed to spend.
Thank you.
The second half of that, the title of that says that establish a cap bank. That means that this could be banked for future expenditures if something were to happen. But you're $947,000 under the cap. You're not exceeding anything, even though it says that. Just to make that clear.
Okay. So, unless there's any other comment from the committee on the explanation that Leon just gave us, would someone like to make a motion to introduce the ordinance?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried. And then the next thing is the municipal budget notice. Municipal budget of the Township of Upper, County of Cape May for the fiscal year 2014. Be it resolved that the following statements of revenues and appropriations shall constitute the municipal budget for the year 2014. Be it further resolved the said budget to be published in the press in the issue of the 24th of March 2014. The governing body of the Township of Upper does hereby approve the following budget for the year 2014.
Okay, now the explanation. Tonight is the introduction of the budget, and for, especially for John's sake, the procedure that we're doing right now. You've had meetings, you've had workshops, you've had a lot of discussion on the budget. This is what is being presented. We really are starting the state's calendar right now with this. So it'll be introduced tonight, as long as 3 people say yes to go. And the public hearing will be on April 14th. From tonight to April 14th, you can have 5 more meetings if you want to discuss the budget. On April 14th, you can adopt it as is. You can change every single line item on April 14th. Tonight's vote is not a vote to adopt this, it's not a vote to finalize this, it's a vote to start the process. Even though we've been doing this for a while, this starts the official process. When we get to April 14th, at that point in time, something may come up, there may be an emergency that we don't know about, and we may want to make a change for it. There could be anything, it could be discussions amongst the 5 years in another meeting that says we want to add this or track that. So all those changes can be made on April 14th. On April 14th, if we hear the budget and do or don't make changes, and 3 people do vote, we're done. So that's the end of the budget on April 14th, provided that 3 people vote to adopt it. Between now and then, you can talk about it. This is what we're sending to the state. It is, as we talked about, it's a 3-cent tax increase. It's a slight increase in expenditures over last year. Your salaries are down from last year. The biggest thing is we have a little more debt service, and the health insurance. And then that's about the only thing that really changed. You have less revenue.
Plus the $150,000 that goes towards the first-year payment for the revale.
Right. And you have less money of your own, is one of the other reasons why we do have the tax increase. It is 3 cents. That's pretty much where we were at every meeting. You've made changes here and there to some of the line items that really do not affect the overall picture that much. So that's what you'll be introducing. And remember, you're not voting to finish this tonight. You're voting to start this. Even though we've been going on for a long time, it's a start tonight as far as the state's concerned. So you heard the resolution from Barbara, and now, unless there's any questions from anyone, she should take a roll call, a motion to introduce it, second, and a roll call vote. Are there any questions to me from anyone before you do that? I think we've been through a lot. Again, this is the first time you two did this part of the process. That's why I wanted to. Usually I'll come for the introduction, because all you do is just, you have 3 say yes and away you go. But I figured you might want to hear what you're voting for, what you're not voting for. Thank you.
Thanks. I think one thing by way of comment, and you had discussed this with me, this budget will be available to the taxpayers
Many ways.
for their examinations in a number of ways. You can come to City Hall, you can get a copy. The best way would be to go to the website, www.township.com, and there will be a copy of this budget with all of its line items available for all the taxpayers to see. So it's very important that the taxpayers have the ability to look into the budget and see where our money is being spent.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments for Leon? Okay, so then it would be appropriate this time for someone to make a motion to introduce the budget.
There was a resolution?
Second.
Okay,
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
yes.
Motion is carried.
If you have anything, you have any more discussions, you can come to it. Go over it, just let me know.
Well, thank you, and we appreciate you coming to our workshop and to keeping us up to date on this. Obviously, we're trying to do the best we can, and be as frugal as we can with the taxpayers' money, so your help is greatly appreciated. And I know you've worked closely with John, and that's important as well, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Alan.
Right, so at this time, we'll go back to the reports of the governing bodies, and I'll ask you, Barbara, if you have anything for us this evening.
I have nothing this evening, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Daniel?
Just one thing at this time. We did receive, or I received a call from the attorney for South Jersey Gas. They're looking for an easement on Block 479, Lot 5101. They apparently have an appraisal of it. We would obviously have to review that, make a determination whether or not we want to use the appraiser that we have hired in the past to confirm the value, and then we would have to go forward if you sought to grant the easement. The one question that did come up, Paul and I talked about it, is the easement area that they're looking for is the same easement area that the Atlantic Electric lines are on. The attorney for the gas company indicated that they thought that they would have the authority to do that. I obviously told him we can't change any of that. It's going to be subject to whatever rights that other easement has. But he wanted to go forward. My, I guess, request to the Township Committee that if we get that information, I intend to put that on an agenda item for you to look and give me formal direction as to what you want to do. So just make you aware.
What exactly is the easement?
It's part of the pipeline.
What do they plan on doing with it?
It's part of the pipeline.
Okay.
They are changing.
The one that's proposed?
Yes.
Okay.
My understanding is they're changing the route somewhat. I don't think this is part of that, but it's part of that process. And then I just have one item for closed session personnel.
And that had nothing to do with the station, right?
It doesn't, but it's similar. That's another parcel that apparently they're looking at from your meeting. I obviously wasn't there, so I talked to the attorney briefly about it, but he wasn't aware of their specific approach. In fact, he mentioned a different site, so.
Yeah. It's very preliminary, so.
Okay.
Okay. Paul?
Thank you. Last week, we received a copy of a letter from the Department of Transportation to the State Department of Environmental Historic Preservation Office. And they're essentially looking for our input on essentially concurrence of their analysis for the Route 50 bridge over the Tuckahoe River. They haven't started because they're going through a redesign to avoid the existing gas main that goes under the Tuckahoe River. The contractor had concerns about driving the piling for a temporary bridge that was going to be over top of that existing 20-inch main, and he was afraid of hitting it because they don't know the exact location of its elevation. So they're going through a redesign process, and as part of that redesign process, they had to go through all of the stakeholder input for historical review. So part of that historical review is copying the township to see if we concur with the DOT's analysis that the new proposed bridge location, which essentially they're going to have less disturbance because instead of building the temporary bridge, I'll say to the west of the existing bridge, now they're not doing that, and they're just kind of widening the bridge slightly to accommodate construction of one lane, under construction, one lane for traffic. And so they'll maintain traffic on the existing bridge while they reconstruct the new bridge. So they've gone through it.
Do you feel that will have any negative impact? I mean, this time of year is one thing, but how about in the summertime when there's a lot of traffic on Route 50?
I believe with a limited, scope of, most of the lane closures are going to be during the off-seasons period of time, and the amount of traffic, most of our traffic through Tuckahoe really actually comes down 49 and heads south on 50. There's not a lot of seasonal traffic additional that comes down 50 that would impact the traffic.
The only reason I bring that up is that now that it's not new, it's a couple years old, but they have that new interchange where you can get off on the expressway that puts you right down through Mays Lane to take 50, and I know that there are people that are starting to use that more than they have in the past.
Right. I don't think so, but still looking at, from the historical review, because there's less disturbance, the DOT feels there is less historical impact potential to the neighborhood. So that's, they're looking for a concurrence of that analysis.
Okay,
And that's all I had. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Barbara?
I have a couple things this evening. First of all, it's time for another blood drive, and Megan, our tax assessor, has set one up for March 26th at the community center from 2 to 7. As she usually asks the committee for permission for an employee that donates blood to go into a raffle for a day off. She's asking for permission from the committee for that again. If you feel that that would be warranted.
So for those that haven't been familiar with this, what we have done in the past in an effort to increase the support from the employees, we've offered a little bit of incentive where everyone who gives blood gets their name in a hat, and we pick one name and we allow that individual that wins that to have an additional day off. It has worked in the past, and I will say that this year in particular, it's a good cause because the Red Cross is really behind in their donations, contributions of blood, mainly because of the weather problems that they've experienced. So, I think if we can help facilitate that and continue the process that we've done in the past, it's a good thing. So, I'm in favor of it, but we'll see what you guys have to say about it.
Need that in form of a motion?
Yes, please.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Okay? Is there any further discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next item I have is, we have a request from our EMS chief to attend a emergency management / incident command. It's not emergency management, it's more incident command class in Texas. There is no cost to the township whatsoever for his travel or expenses in Texas. It's just his time to go to the class, time away from the job to go to the class. It's for a week, April 7th to 11th. It's recommended for EMS, for fire, for emergency management. It's a very prestigious class, for him to be accepted in it at no cost, that they cover all of his travel expenses. It was quite.
So what you're asking for is basically is to cover the weeks
For his time away.
he's away. And I would agree that it is prestigious to anytime get, in this day and age, to have full coverage of travel expenses as well as a registration to be covered, speaks highly for, I guess we're talking about Chief Potter.
Yes.
And so I think it really is advantageous not only to his benefit and certainly the overall experience that the rescue squad will get out of it, but I also think he can contribute a lot to our volunteer fire companies that are out there that can also utilize, the information that he learns on the incident command. So would someone like to make a motion? I'll make a motion that we approve that request to cover his week of salary, considering he'll be in training the whole time, and everything else will be covered as a full expense. So,
I second.
is there any discussion?
Have we a way to backfill the position while he's attending the course?
Yes, the schedule will just fill in with other part-time employees.
Okay.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
We're looking for a good summary and a good report there, Chief Potter.
And then one last thing. It's that time of the year for affordable housing, COA. We need to reconcile all of the money that we've taken in for 2013 into the Affordable Housing Trust, and reconcile any money that we've paid out for our projects, our rehabilitation projects. In doing that, COA asks that the committee give permission for actually the mayor, myself, and Paul, who's the municipal housing liaison, to sign the reports. We have taken in, this year, for 2013, we've taken in $123,732.05. And we have paid out for our rehabilitation projects, about $120,000. $117,969 we've paid out for our housing projects. Our current balance in that account is $365,556. So I just need a motion for the mayor and Paul and I to sign the reports. I'll also be sending COA copies of our bank accounts each month, so they can reconcile with what is already inputted in their computer system.
And I think it's worthwhile to explain that this program benefits those that have some need in the township. And the good news is there was at one time, the state was preparing to capture all those funds that we had put in place in escrow and utilize it for their own coffers. And we have qualified to be able to utilize the monies that are taken in from developers' fees and utilize it for residents in the township that have need. And it's not just rehabilitation of their house, it also includes potential rent subsidies, some mortgage subsidies. Everything is brought before the township committee before it's allocated out. But we are using those funds in the township, using it for our residents that live here versus running the risk of having it taken out by the state and utilized in a different area.
So I just need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we have the mayor, Barbara Spiegel, and Paul sign for the reconciliation of the accounts.
Second.
Is there any other discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Condon?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank you, that's all I had this evening.
Okay. Mr. Coggins.
I think Mr. Costello pretty much covered the big news tonight, the financial department, with the introduction of the budget. We will have two resolutions on the agenda for authorizing the use of funds for the additional containers for the new automated trash system, and also a change order for Cascade's vendor supplying these containers.
Okay. That's just you. That's good job, we appreciate it. I know you put a lot of, I want to compliment you that the time and the effort that you put forth. You're basically 2 months into your committee election, and you took on a very difficult task, and it's really appreciated the time and effort you've put into it. So I personally want to thank you for your time. Mr. Young.
Update on the well. They pulled the pump the other day, and the pump needs to be replaced from the manufacturer to $215. The well company has ordered the well. There wasn't anything on hand that matched what we have, so they had to order one. Mike, did you get any update on when it was coming in?
He was supposed to call me today. I didn't hear from him today unless there's a message in on the phone. He was hoping to have it in this week. I'm sorry.
You know what, for the record, Michael, why don't you state your name so that people are aware who you are?
Mike Jones, Supervisor Carpenter, Council Butler, Road Department.
I'm deferring to Mike on this, because I've been working with him every day, I want to be easy talking to the well person.
Go ahead.
And lost my train of thought.
You were talking about...
It's ordered.
The pump is ordered. He's supposed to have it in this week. When he gets it in this week, they're going to shock the system, seal it for the weekend. Come next Monday, a week from today, we'll flush the system out, get all the lines in town hall blown out, clean. I spent 3 hours today trying to get the lines clean, and they're just full of all kinds of stuff. I told the ladies if the bathrooms work, finally decided they didn't work, then they worked, but we're getting there. Hopefully when he gets this done, I'm going to hook up some connections so we can put hoses out the window and flush the system out without having to turn the water supply on and off to keep flushing the system out. That's gonna be the easiest way to do it. So I gotta get some brass connectors and some hoses and hook them up and get the system blown out.
I mean, are we confident that this will finally take care of this issue?
Yes, he flushed it last week, he came, when he pulled the pump out, he's got some kind of contraption, and all guys are their own breed, the stuff that he pulled off of his truck. He put it down in there, he put this hose down there, he got the air or something pushed up, and all the water, all the stones, all the dirt, everything had fallen into the well. They pushed up with water, Tony probably can explain what the correct term was. Pressure, and it brings everything to the top and blows it out the side. And he did that for probably about 2.5 hours until nothing else was coming out of straight water. So he is confident that this will cure the problem. It's been a process, but it's a process of elimination. And that's where we stand.
And the problem originated with the well being broken, but somebody ran into it. And it started soaking all the sand down into the well. So everything else we did pretty much couldn't be fixed or create any avenue of repairing it until we got the well fixed.
Well, it's been a long process, and I have to compliment our staff for bearing with us as we went through this process. So I just want to make sure, for my own comfort, that we're confident that hopefully after a week from today, everything will be where it's supposed to be.
Yes.
This is the start of an issue, that's why
There's
staff.
still some flushing out issues to do, so to chlorinate everything and make sure that we get our board health certificates back.
Board of Health has to test it after we chlorinate it and come back and test it. We may fail, and it's not uncommon to fail with the health department for this, for bacteria. Because of the air down in the well, it breeds bacteria, so we may fail the first time, and to have to shock it and shut it down again the following weekend, and do it all over again. The rescue squad, we just went through the same thing with the rescue squad. They failed the first go around. We sealed it, flushed it out, we're waiting for a test on that. They're coming this week to do the vetting.
Correct, Thursday.
Tanks, to rebed all the conditioner tanks and get them done, so when this is all done, everything else is done, we don't have to wait for anything.
Be ready up and running. It's just, like I said, it's a stepping stone each way we go. We can't finish one thing until we get the other part done. And then what I'm going to ask is for Mike or Paul, put some bollards around that well, so nobody can run into it again. Pretty expensive.
Yeah, put a concrete barrier around it or something.
Yeah, someone would have said something about it, we would be way ahead of the game here, but they didn't, so. And the other issue while you're up here is the heat system. Mike's been real patient working with Core. Due to the well being off, they created air pockets and steam pockets in all the feed lines for the entire project, building. They spent hours bleeding lines in here, bypassing lines to get the system to work again. I'm sure there's a lot of sand in that system also.
It's possible. Core said, if we go with Core, but while Core was here, who we have shared services with the school, they didn't get some of them level, and they tried. And Paul will tell you, it's no rhyme or reason why a pipe is 180 degrees here and 2 foot away, it's ice cold. That's the heating system we have. And if there's air stuck there, the heat doesn't travel. They finally got that blown out, and then the next morning, there was no heat in the bathrooms. They were 40 degrees colder in the bathrooms than in the kitchen. Because something with the way they put the system in, he explained to me, is not proper. The bathrooms are on demand from the kitchen. So when the kitchen gets overheated, that excess goes into the bathrooms. And it shouldn't be that way. So they're going to look to correct the situation with the heating system and get it all figured out and possibly put, and I don't know if it's possible, Paul was looking into it a little bit, said it may not be possible, to put thermostats, or not thermostats, sensors in all of the offices. So it regulates those offices. When it calls for heat, it'll heat just those offices. Because right now, as it stands in Barb Spiegel's office, it's 80 degrees. Go in the clerk's office, and it's 67 degrees.
Are they on separate zones or?
No.
Same zone.
Same zone.
While that's what they're looking, they're gonna look at zone valves to do whatever they gotta do.
Actually, each one of them, there's no valve in its own thermostat, that's how it's important.
So they're gonna look at all that to see what we have to do, but they're waiting until after the heating system is over, heating season is over to do this.
And also, there's possibly some repairs we have to do to the boiler.
Yes.
With backflow preventer valves, that kind of things. I told Mike to hold off on all that because I don't want to double up on the repairs. Until we get the sand issue taken care of and the air and the well back up and running full time, we're just going to create another problem down the road possibly. So that'll be something we have to look into after the well's up and running to get the system flushed out. I want to commend Mike for his patience on this and.
And I want to commend the staff for past 6 weeks to be putting up with that.
Been longer than that.
Yeah, it seems like it's been way too long, but, all right, if we're close to where we need to be, because I think we're at the point of, if we're not close, it's time to think of other options, so.
We don't want to go the other option.
No.
All right,
The extreme of this would have been putting a brand new well.
well, that's
And it wasn't
what I'm
necessary.
suggesting.
It wasn't necessary.
There's a lot of process for the well and permits and time and caffeine.
Well, that much I realize, and I'm not suggesting we do that, but what I am suggesting is that it's time to get this done.
Begin this is confident
Okay.
that this is the issue and we'll be taken care of.
We're getting there.
Okay.
And we've got,
And I'm not pointing at you, I appreciate all that you've done, it's,
we've left it at Genesis Hampson's hands, and was a well driller to take it from the bladder tank out to make sure that everything from there is proper.
okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
The last meeting, we're going to go over my request to add money into the bond now, the explanations, or Dan?
I'm sorry, what's that?
John had asked, and Jody asked for
Right.
clarifications and numbers.
Yeah, I just saw you handed it out.
Okay. Well, again, I did a chart here for all sports in the township, the breakdown of how many kids are playing, how many kids based on the 2010 census there are in the township. Under the age of 19 in 2010, we had 3,266 children in our township. Approximately 2,275% of those children play sports in our township.
Excuse me, could you put the microphone in front of you so I could hear you?
It won't make any difference.
This will not be the last time tonight.
We'll try it. Is that any better?
I'm not doing job.
Okay. The primary concern we have is with the baseball program and in consolidating fields, showing where the cost savings would be down the road if we put this $50,000 into the bond. If you look at the numbers on our chart, we have 344 players in Little League and Babe Ruth and T-ball. Out of that, we have approximately 410 practices and 280 games. By consolidating the field down to a man's field and doing away with the baseball fields at Caldwell Park as well as the Tuckahoe Field, it's going to generate a major need for practice facilities. The only way we can do that is to put the lights in so we can extend the amount of playing time for the kids and the programs. Again, by consolidating the fields all down to a man's, it's going to be a major cost saving in maintenance on the fields, as well as the security on the fields. So, the breakdown I gave, I'm not going to go over every sport, and I have extras here if anybody would like a copy of this, but it breaks down every sport, how many kids play in the sport, how many games, how many times a week they practice, and it's all based on our recreation format. And I'd like to thank Barb and her staff for getting that for me. The figures I did give you do not include the use of our fields or facilities for any summer camps, outside groups, craft shows, car shows, or anything else. That's over and above. But the lights are, I think, are warranted in order for us to move forward and consolidate these fields into one area. If not, we're going to have to continue to maintain approximately 5 to 8 fields elsewhere for practices alone.
All right, a couple questions. I see here, looking at some of the figures that you had put up on the Sky Drive, that in 2012, we had 350 children that were 12 and under, versus 283 now, or 283 in 2013. You had 24 teams in 2012, but you've expanded to 27 teams. Now, I guess my question would be this. we could reduce the number of practices needed if we go back to fewer teams. And what we probably should do is see the number of available field hours that we have based on the number of fields we have versus the number of practices we have now. So I think what you've got, you got a pretty good start at what you're trying to come up with. But I think to take it to the next level, you know, how many field hours do we have available per team?
The problem is, it's weather driven. It's something you can't calculate. Well, I can tell you roughly how many we need. You can base it on the 410 practices.
Okay.
At an hour and a half, roughly to 2 hours each. You're talking 820 hours.
Okay, so that's 820 hours, but how many field hours do we have in the course of a week? In other words, you can use these fields from, you know, let's just say 7 o'clock in the morning through 8 o'clock at night on the weekends.
You can't.
Well, on the weekends.
On the weekends, but
And
again,
then during the week, you have probably from 4 o'clock in the afternoon through, you know, when it starts getting, the days start getting longer, through about 8 o'clock at night.
you can do a rough estimate, but I think it would be a very rough estimate on percentages because of the weather situations that come up with the teams. They can't have practices. What we've done, as far as I can see, is even though there's less kids, before there's a lot more kids on each team. And it limited their playing time, and a lot of kids were dropping out of programs because they weren't getting the playing time.
But the argument we're trying to make here is for more fields. So I just want to make sure.
We're going to have less fields.
We're going to have fewer fields. So we're going to close some of the other fields?
We're going to close Tuckahoe Field, we're going to close the fields in Caldwell Park, and everything will be put in the mains. So it's going to condense it, but without the lights, we can't utilize it to the extent that we need.
Okay, so we are going to close Tuckahoe fields. All right.
And 3 fields at Caldwell Park.
Well, for
Right, so
bases.
we're going to move the 3 fields from one place to the other, we're not eliminating.
But it's still going to,
But we'll be eliminating the 2 fields in Tuckahoe?
we're going to need to build additional fields that are managed to make up for the practice.
Okay.
There's no way around it.
How many fields we're going to eliminate? Any,
We're not going to eliminate anything except we're going to consolidate them into one area. There is no elimination because we don't have enough fields.
No, I'm going to rephrase that. How many fields were moved to amend?
5.
And the other, those ones that we're not going to use will be abandoned.
They'll be abandoned or used for other sports. Tuckahoe will, Caldwell Park is going to become one big field.
That's understandable, yes.
Tuckahoe will not be used at all.
That will be abandoned.
Gone.
What else was abandoned?
That's the only other one. There's not, right now softball's going to stay where it is. There's a hope that down the road we'll be able to consolidate girls softball into a managed, but that's going to be probably a few years before that can happen. But again, it's not going to eliminate fields, we're going to have to build the fields to replace them.
We'll have to build fields at Amendment
Right.
to replace them.
No,
So that is coming.
It's going to have to, unless the numbers drop drastically in the next 3 to 5 years. Which I don't see
Because
happening.
having children going to Minnesota and now reduce the expenses somewhere else, it makes no sense.
It's going to reduce expenses because of the maintenance and the upkeep.
Well, that's one.
And consolidate everything
It's
stays.
to do that, yes, and then.
All the children will stay at Amanda's Field, everything will be isolated at Amanda's Field for baseball, so we won't be dragging around the dirt pro for the infields and all the other issues. It'll all be consolidated into Amanda's Field.
Well, that was the point to begin with, that we consolidated and eliminated the rest of the fields, that we don't need anymore. So that's going to save money. On one hand, we'll have our sports complex.
It's going to streamline the process for us, is what it's going to do. I can't say there's going to be a major savings, except for maintenance workers and the cost of it to run the equipment from one park to the other. With the equipment we have at Amanda's now, we'll be able to take care of the school, Amanda's Field, and the Tuckahoe Road fields without trail and anything. That's going to be a substantial savings in man hours as well as gas and wear and tear.
Therefore, at the end of it, there will be a savings.
Sure, there should be, when it's all said and done.
What kind of a time span are we looking for, roughly?
For the savings or for the work?
Well, the whole thing take place, I know, but as I said,
We're going to see baseball up and running with lights until next season in the spring.
year,
A year. The lights, we have all the conduit run, right?
Yes.
All the lines are run, sewer lines are run, water lines are run. We have 3 fields basically up and ready to go with no lights. Now, the problem we have is to get down there and put the lights in, we're gonna probably have to do some damage on what was already done. We have to put in concrete foundations, because these are metal poles, bolted on top of the foundations. So we're gonna have to excavate for that. And there's also some drainage issues we have to address. With clearing and all that kind of things to get.
But in the end, the go and spend this money on Wednesday, will close other fields that you want to go and need in the future.
Right.
So there's a sentence there now, not right now.
We already closed Tucker Hill Field, Tucker Hill Road Field, we haven't been using that for anything except for the cross. We're in the process of looking at possibly doing a T-ball field at Amanda's, separate from the other fields, and 2 practice facilities at Amanda's. And that should make up the practice time that we're going to lose by losing 3 fields at Cottle Park. But it'll enable us to have a mower at Cottle Park, all the equipment at Cottle Park will stay there. So we're not trailing and dragging equipment from one place to the other and losing hours a day. So that part will definitely, I think, make it a lot safer and cost-effective for us.
Is there plans to move girls softball over there?
If they have lights.
Well, I think that's going to be another issue. We're putting lights for boys. Certainly the girls are going to be asking for it as well.
They understand that, lights are going up in the county grant, which is open space. So therefore, it has to be used out of Amanda's field, from my understanding.
No, there's none of the county funds are being used for lighting.
I'm sorry, you're right. That was the bond.
It's not approved for lighting.
Yeah.
Everything does not exclude lights.
Right.
Now, with baseball, I know in a lot of these sports, 2 in particular, wrestling, Challenger, we do have a number of children who are from other townships participating in these sports. Now, in the baseball program, are all of these 283 children, well, we've got 283 plus 61, so we've got about 344 children, upper township residents?
My understanding is a couple club teams in the township, but they travel. So I think
They're not part of this, they're not part of this formula.
And I think we should clarify that the Challenger sport is for physically handicapped individuals. And so, we're in an effort to try and offer sporting opportunities or sports opportunities for those that reside in the township, which may not come up to the level of individuals that, we certainly don't want to in any way deprive them if it's possible. And so that's one of the reasons why some of the people from outside are a part of the program, so they actually have enough to field some teams and do what they're trying to do, to help facilitate some of those needs.
Sure, and the impact on the fields there is very minimal. I see wrestling as one where, from what I understand, it's almost 50% of the kids who wrestle are from other townships. So I think that, we need to address that as we move forward and we begin to use these numbers. When we look at men's softball, we have 80 people participate in that. Are they 80 township residents, or are they coming from other areas to participate in the softball program?
I'm sure there's some from out of the area playing on them, but we don't have a problem with those fields being used. They're not backed up. There's 2 fields designated for softball, and they also use the outfields for soccer. So I couldn't include any information except for the 80 players, because they practice whenever they can get a field. So there's no...
So those fields aren't the ones on directly, they're back in the pit.
Right.
I mean, I used to play men's softball myself.
The only thing that's affected with me requesting additional 50,000 is baseball. It has nothing to do with any other parks. I just gave you these numbers so that you can see, roughly how many kids are here, how many in each sport, how much practicing we do, and you can get an idea of what it takes. But baseball is the only thing affected by the lights, other than we could use it possibly for charity events or something like that, or craft shows, or down the road. So the only issue here is baseball.
So we're looking at 340 participants, some of them may be siblings, so we're probably looking at less than 300. We're probably looking at less than 300 individual taxpayers.
It doesn't matter if they're siblings or not, it's 344 kids to play.
Right, I'm just looking at tax-paying households and how we're...
That way I have no idea, But again, if you look at 410 practices and you're practicing, sometimes 2-3 times a week if they get the fields.
Okay.
it's a substantial amount of practice.
What is the purpose of this lights? What are they going to do? These fields, the lights, what are they going to do?
Which fields?
Whatever these lights are going for.
That's going to be our Babe Ruth field and our Little League.
What is the intent of these lights? It has night games?
Yeah, the old teams, Babe Ruth plays at night, because a lot of the kids work. So during their season, they play at nighttime.
And what age group is Babe Ruth?
14 through 16, I think, and then they have the 16 to 19, they did that at one time.
But I don't even see those, I don't even see those numbers in your
So the
stats.
numbers are in the 344.
Well, what I see is 12 and under and 13 and 14.
Well, I'm sorry, 13 and 14.
Oh,
And then they have,
13 and 14, okay, so you got 61 people who would be playing night games. So we're putting lights in for 61 people. I don't know if I see the economic benefit of that.
Is part of the opportunity of putting the lights on the fields also just kind of a vision that we could utilize those fields for other things, whether it's a fundraiser, whether it's tournaments? I mean, I will say that a number of the traveling teams play at night in other communities. And I'm not so sure, and I don't really know this answer, if that would ultimately create a conflict, meaning, or does that in some way, deprive the whole sports, baseball opportunity for our youths because we can't compete with having lighted fields? Because they have lighted fields right now, right? They're using call.
Little League and Carl.
We might have it might have a detrimental effect. I'm not suggesting that we just go ahead. I understand we're doing the bean counting here, but we also have to.
I don't know what the numbers are, they got 61 kids playing in the nighttime,
That's in Babe Ruth one.
100 kids. Let's take up 100 kids.
Yeah.
We're going to spend $50,000, like that on lights, lighting.
Those lights are also going to affect the Little League fields too, it's not just for Babe Ruth.
I understand that.
Because when we put like one set of standards on each side.
If I may, maybe I can give you some history on it from years back. The lights at the Little League field were purchased and paid for by the Baseball Association. That was in the early stages of the design of Amanda's Field, and the plan was that Caldwell Park would become a football field, and the Baseball Association at that time struck an agreement with the Township Committee that said, if you move us, you'll move us to a comparable facility. So the association had that agreement. My understanding of what happened was that the reason the lights are proposed at Amanda's is because Caldwell, those lights will stay, and that will be an all-football facility. That's what's generating this, because if you move baseball out there, they have the lights at the Babe Ruth field, and they have the lights at the Little League field already. So that's what's generating it from a historical standpoint.
In exchange, they're moving the lights, they have the lights here, so obviously they're asking us to give the lights.
And they pay for the lights at the Little League field.
Is there a way that instead of buying these lights, can we rent the lights when we need it?
No, because of the height you have to have. These poles are probably 85 feet.
Yeah.
It's not something you can bring in portable.
But if you don't move them out of Caldwell Park, it's not an issue.
That's
Right.
The safe,
One of the reasons we're doing this is because if football has no practice facility, they're destroying the football field by practicing on it. So if we move baseball to here, it gives us a Little League field and the other Little League field on the back of the football field for practice with lights on it, so they don't continue to destroy Caldwell Park with the football field.
Well, I'm just wondering, if we let you're talking about 130 tops, maybe, kids playing football. So if you have them practice at Amanda's Field, then the lighting doesn't necessarily.
Well, it's still lights to practice. Daylight savings time, they practice from 5 to 8.
The season goes on almost to Thanksgiving, so they need lights too.
When I look at the number on this, and this is my argument, I understand where you guys are going with this, but when you look at $50,000, it keeps potentially 300 or 400 kids off the street at nighttime in a structured program. It's minuscule compared to what we're going to spend with these kids being on the street. And for us to compete and be even somewhere close to the other programs in South Jersey, we have to have the lights.
Well, I'm not saying close the programs, and I'm not saying,
You're asking me to make adjustments and you don't have understanding of programs, John. You know,
well, I mean,
I was 25 years and I had parents with a car that circled around the field for practice.
the adjustments that I'm looking for are justifications in terms of where we're going to spend the money, how we can allocate it, and can we do a lot of this just by better scheduling?
I don't think so, because we don't have enough fields to schedule any better. And our hours are limited with your coaching staff, and when the players can get here, after school functions, we're limited to what we can do. So we can't just carte blanche say we're going to practice from 3 o'clock.
Well, if you look, just look at the numbers in baseball, they're declining. So we were able to make it last year. So do we need to have more
fluctuates
facilities?
every year. I mean, you're looking at 1 year to decline.
Well, I'm actually looking at two.
It fluctuates every year.
Yeah.
You have to look, if you want to go back to school, I'll get you the consensus on how many kindergarten, first and second graders we have, and we can see if it's greater than what was there when they were in first and second grade. I mean, you're looking at an intangible number.
The Caldwell Park, it's going to be there for football.
Football, possibly night soccer games, and night lacrosse games, if Mike chooses to use it.
Well, we already have the lights there, that field is going to remain. Now, abandon that, that's going to stay.
The baseball field will not.
The whole park is going to stay, not eliminated. So, meaning that it's going to be there, the lights are already there. Maybe we'll have to look at a schedule, a different schedule, so that, baseball or whatever can still be there.
The problem is that you can't play baseball and football in the same field because of the goalpost locations, the bleachers and everything else, we have to move all the time. Once baseball starts, the goalposts come down, nobody can play football there. There's more to it than just reconfiguring the schedule. I mean, I've looked at every aspect of it, and I've looked at it for the last 40 years that I've coached in this township. And I think it's given me a good idea of what we need to take care of the recreation program and consolidate this. We have a lot of volunteers, again, that live in this township, that spend a lot of time with these kids. And if you're going to turn around and try to save $50,000, we're going to make them do more than they're doing at time allocations that we're going to dictate to them. I just don't see the rationale of that.
Plus, those lights will be there for 20 years.
Yeah, but what I'm looking at too is the offset. If we are going to add to some facilities, I think we need to do a much better job at closing other ones down. If we're going to consolidate them, we really need to consolidate. We need to look at closing the field in Summers Avenue. Some of the other fields that we have out there to narrow this down to 2 major venues. I'm very reluctant to go ahead and say, well, let's just go ahead and spend $50,000 to improve a field here. It's not for the
You said a field. It's
Well, we're talking about-
It's going to be 6 baseball fields and 7 in that complex that are effective, not one field.
And it's probably a very good idea to do it, but let's look at closing some other fields down to offset.
That's something
the
that's
spend.
going to be done.
How viable is it to really look at adding girls softball to Amanda's Field as well?
Cost-wise?
No, I mean, existing plans and fields and lights, because now you're combining more, and we have 200 girls according to this, that's in softball. And quite frankly, if we can do what's being suggested and somehow, if we have to cut a regular field for baseball and utilize it for softball, or, 2 fields, I'm not sure what softball needs, but, if we're building 6 and we put 2 as softball and 4 as baseball with lights, can we accommodate that?
But if you look at it, over the last 2 years, we've already consolidated a lot of fields. You've taken a T-ball field off of Old Tuckahoe Road. We've stopped using the fields behind Trinity, the Methodist Church in Tuckahoe.
But Paul, we're still going to be faced with another lighting expense at Summers Avenue. And so at least if we do the softball fields at Amanda's Field somehow, then the lights that we could potentially purchase will be all encompassing.
You'd have to put in an additional set of lights, because the lights you're doing at Amanda's, that the 2 proposed, the Baby Ruth Field, the Little League Field, The Little League field has a mound. The softball can't play on a field with a mound.
Paul, can you use the microphone so we can hear, please?
I'm speaking right into the microphone.
That's the problem.
So you can't-
You can't swap back and forth between T-ball and Little League, girls softball and Little League, because the field configuration is different.
Well, how long?
And they can't play with the mound on their field, so you have to have separate fields.
The old Tuckahoe Road field, we closed that last year for T-ball.
Isn't that the one that you said you were going to close?
No, that's up in Tuckahoe. They go up and play in Tuckahoe.
There's two more fields in Tuckahoe, okay.
Right, and this year, they've moved soccer from playing at the elementary school and behind the Trinity Church in Marmora, and so those are other fields that we don't have to maintain for soccer for this season. So, there's already been over the last 2 years, 3 locations now that we've consolidated out of.
And the number that we can condense down to is an unknown factor right now. We don't know, we're not prepared to bring it into one park. We're going to be doing this work 3 or 4 times down the road, tearing the property up, excavating, regrading, and it's going to be triple the cost factor than it is right now.
Well, I think that, I understand what you're saying, and, I think what you're saying is we need some more fields, or we need some more baseball diamonds for these kids to play on. So if we can calculate we need more, we should be able to calculate how many we need. So then we ought to be able to go backwards too. We ought to be able to back into that number. And that's what I'm asking you.
You're looking at an unknown number year to year.
Well, then what you're telling me is,
This is what we
this is
need
the
to
reasoning that you're using to tell me we need more.
This is based on our numbers right now, and consolidating down to Amanda's Field and doing away with it. Tuckahoe Fields, Caldwell Park, we need the lights to be able to field enough practice facilities for these kids. Not just the games, it's practices.
I'm looking at your numbers, and your numbers are telling me we got a shrinking population in baseball, yet we need more fields.
You have a shrinking population, but that's, again, you're looking at 1 year, John. Go to the school and find out the population of the lower grades. Again, we have to be ready. What if we have an influx of 100 kids next year? We're going to turn 100 kids away? Because we don't have the fields for them to play on?
I think we should plan with what we have now.
That's what we're doing right now. That's what I'm trying to do right now to make it so we're viable and that we're not going to destroy this field down there 5 different times to make upgrades. We should do, the infrastructure has to be done first. Has to be done.
And it's really,
We're going to just keep tearing the fields apart, trenching them, doing concrete work, doing excavating work, and redo the fields 5 times. And it doesn't make sense to do that. You always take the infrastructure first. I've worked construction for 45 years. I've done heavy equipment and everything else. You do your infrastructure first. Then we have to make our plans around it. But if we can't make the upgrades on the infrastructure, then the whole program is moot.
I understand what you're saying. What I don't understand is the numbers that you put up here aren't showing that. So all I'm asking is that we,
I disagree.
but it's saving on maintenance of the football field. That's what you're saving on, and the consolidation of the fields. You're moving, so football doesn't have to practice on the playing field, which we have to every year reseed and spend the money on that. If you can practice where the baseball, the 2 Little League fields are for baseball, if they can practice down at those fields and not practice on the main field,
okay?
then that field is saved. You then move, but they can't do that with baseball there. So baseball has to move to Amanda's Field, where we've already had the fields built. But they can't play there and practice there full-time because they don't have lighting. So you move the lights to where we've already built the fields,
Okay.
so that they can play there. Football then can use Caldwell Park to its fullest, so to save on maintenance. With all the baseball fields now at Amanda's Field, you then have the consolidation of not having to transport equipment between Amanda's Field, Caldwell Park, Tuckahoe.
Your thought process is going in the right direction. Now, what we need to do is we need to quantify that in dollars. We need to see, by doing this, how many dollars we can take out of future recreation budgets for maintaining these fields that are going to offset the cost of putting these lights in. And I think that's all we need to see. We need to see if we're going to have justifiable savings for spending this money.
We didn't look at the justified savings on everything that was put in the bond from Public Works and the yield from the
Right, let's not get personal.
I'm just saying, I think they have to quantify all that too, and nobody did, you're busting my stomach.
All right.
So, go ahead.
No.
Let me,
I think we should let it go to the next meeting.
let me just add, John. I think what we have here is, there's two issues that need to be they're flat out addressed. There's an obligation, number one, which is the biggest thing, that we're going to consolidate these fields, we're going to move baseball from Caldwell to Landis. That's the plain and simple obligation, that the lights have got to be put up over that field. That's part of our consolidation plan.
It's also an agreement with the committee.
It was an agreement the committee made when they donated, they raised $50,000, whatever it was.
Yes. So we had an organization that came along and put those lights in over there. We said we would move them, and we have to fulfill that obligation that we made to them back in the day. The second thing is to try to come down with a number on how many games are going to be played or practices are going to be played on these fields is a tough thing to do. Because of my experience in recreation over the last couple of years, I can't tell you how many times it was rained out, they had to move the date here, then they had people doubling up. So I mean, if we can look at what we have to do right now, this is a plan, all right? This isn't something where we're going to say, all right, we're not going to put the lights up until we start consolidating fields. No, it's got to be done in stages. We're going to put the lights out there, then we're going to reevaluate everything according to need, and start to downside and to eliminate the amount of manpower that we have to send out to take care of these fields. But what I heard you saying, and I understand, is infrastructure needs to be taken care of now, so that we're not spending money down the road to put lights in that maybe somewhere down the road we say, all right, let's approve the lights. Put the lights in now, and then we sit back and we look at this, reevaluate everything, and figure out where we're going to go.
And then just one other thing, look at the numbers, there's already $138,000 in the bond for lights. And I think it's ridiculous to spend $138,000, and then for an additional 50, we can finish it. It's going to cost us probably $100,000 2 years from now to do it if we don't do it now. So it's going to be a cost savings in the long run if we do it all at one time.
Provided we need it.
Also with this too, is that this does not even include some of the plans that baseball
I make a motion
to expanding their program and having tournaments.
Also, something that came to my attention, and I'm not sure how true it is or not, I'm going to look into it. So I think we should probably leave this as an unfinished business and come back in 2 weeks to this. There's some people that say they donate or wanted to donate some stuff, lights and so forth. I'll let them look into that further, and then we pick up this on the next meeting.
This will hold up the introduction of the bond in any of the equipment and all the public works is requesting and any of the other departments are requesting. It's part of the purchasing policy that any of the purchases that go through the bond are approved by committee before the money is encumbered. I mean, it's your choice whether you want to hold up the introduction of the bond and any equipment that any of the other departments need, or any of the spending that the other departments need.
You're referring to item number 12 on their ordinances?
Yes, I am.
And is the $50,000 that they're discussing already in that bond?
It is part of the draft for the introduction this evening. What I'm saying is that $50,000 that Hobie has already requested that's been discussed is part of the draft for the introduction for this evening.
We're not taking that.
Anything that would need to be, anything that would be encumbered needs to be approved by you specifically first.
So you don't understand what she said. You can put it in the bond, but you don't spend it until you have a second vote and then more detailed discussion.
Did you do that last night?
You not into the actual bond, you discussed it, and now it's on the agenda for this meeting to actually act on it.
Move forward.
So, approval is not, it's $50,000, it does not mean that,
It just means you're authorized to make an approval later on if you want.
it's just, come back to full committee for approval, just like anything else.
Yes, just like anything else in the bond, you have
Any
to
of the other
authorize the
purchases in
expenditure.
the bond.
Well, what I can say is, without that $50,000, we cannot complete the baseball field to the Man's Field and have them up and operating until that waste is put up. It's just a simple fact that it's missed or whatever was done, but it has to be done for us to complete that project. It's been going on, what, 8 years now?
No,
10?
over 10 years.
And this has to be done for us to continue that park. So by not approving this money, you're going to stop baseball from having the project that we're supposed to get. It's plain and simple. It's no different than requiring additional equipment or anything else. It's the same thing.
Again, it's not,
We can put things in a bond, then.
you have to have a separate vote later on whether you want to spend the money. Yes.
Now, I understand that. We want to get orders in, or at least get ballpark figures on the lights here, up and ready to go. That takes months to get this accomplished. So, we're all on time frames with our departments. And I'm on time frames in my department too.
Here's the way to look at it. We'll introduce the bond later in the meeting. We can certainly discuss this again at the next meeting. The 2 weeks probably won't in any way slow your process down dramatically, because none of the money can be spent until after we have the public hearing and vote for adoption anyway, which is a month away. So the money's in there for now, and it could actually be approved even with the public hearing and final adoption, and we still can go back and forth. I understand your time constraints, and I do think it's something that should really be considered if we're going to go forward with this project and do it. Some of the pre-planning that needs to take place has to be considered in this as well. So it seems like we're going around and around and around here, and for about probably the most heated discussion I think we've had in a long time that I can remember. So having said that, let's kind of not table this. Let's just put it for further discussion at the next meeting. You can put ongoing discussion, or however you want to list it on the agenda.
Unfinished business?
Yeah, I guess you could say unfinished business, that's fine. And then that'll give some other opportunities to get together. Because I'm personally, quite frankly, one of those believers that what's good for the boys is good for the girls. And I'm looking to see if we can at least do a softball. We're not going to be able, if we're going to be struggling to put lights in for Amanda's Field, my suggestion is that we consider putting at least one softball field so that we'll have lights for them to use in the event that we can't produce the lights in the future for Summers Avenue. At least they'll have one field that's lit. So, that's my personal opinion. I'd like to have looked at from the plan. We're going to have to make some concessions, we're going to have to make some scheduling things, but I have always been a firm believer what's good for the boys is good for the girls, and if we're making that kind of investment, we're going to do it for both.
I agree.
Or for my opinion, anyway.
We're not saying that we don't want to do girls or boys or get more, no, that's not what it's saying.
Well, that's not what I heard earlier. I heard earlier that we're making all baseball fields, and Summers Avenue will stay softball, and they won't have lighted fields for the time being. So I think we need to look at that as well, because just as soon as we approve to go forward with the lights, I can assure you, the softball organization will be here with open arms saying, wow, how come we can't have lights on our...
We're not talking about 50,000, we're talking about more than that.
Well, that's why I suggested we can include a field in the $50,000, we're ahead of the game.
I've already discussed that with Brian. And as long as he knows that it's moving in the proper direction, they're comfortable where they are. They really have no problem staying at Summers Avenue, but they would love lights. As long as he knows that 3 years from now, 2 years from now, at Amanda's Field, we're going to have that.
But that's a guarantee I don't think any of this committee could make at this point.
No.
So I would rather kind of embrace everybody to move forward and consider this, considering that maybe this is a good alternative to look at a potential softball field that will have lights, and we're accommodating a couple different teams in different sports at the same time. We don't have to build 6 baseball fields and not have one of them a softball field. I think we should be able to consider doing that.
Yeah, and we have a softball field figured in there, but right now we have Little League, Babe Ruth, and Little League, right, Paul?
Excuse me?
Little League, Babe Ruth, and the Little League again.
Correct, that's what's,
And then our next field, we're going to be T-ball and softball. Because, again, the infields are different, the dimensions are different.
I understand they're different, but if we're going to be making changes, and we were just told that if we put the lights in, then the fields will come after the lights go in. So that means we still got to build the fields the way we want them, and that's why I think from my opinion, let's try and consolidate that a little bit as well, and that might help to convince some of my colleagues here that it might make sense to do this.
And my main objective is that we can get the foundations in there, even in the other fields. If we're gonna put lights up 5 years from now, we should get the concrete work done when we can, so that we're not tearing that field apart.
I agree, you and I both know that's how it works. If we're going to move forward with this, yes, and then it's what should be done now.
Yeah, I just don't want to see it go 4 times.
Okay. All right, so let's put that as a discussion item for the next meeting or whatever, unfinished business, and we can finish that up. Do you have anything else?
No, I think that's enough for me.
Mr. and Sarah?
Thank you, Chairman. Our trash containers are getting poured, and it should be done, delivery by about Wednesday, possibly Thursday, it should all be accomplished. There's some hiccups in the cans that were asked, some residents requested larger size can, and when they actually saw the can, the physical can, they kind of said, well, I think I can use the smaller one, so we'll get that out of the way in the near future.
Yeah, and I actually gave a request to Barbara from a disabled individual that got larger cans, and, you know, the person definitely can't move it, so. And we're gonna have some.
Right, they thought, larger cans was going to be a good idea, when they actually saw the actual size of it, they said, well, no, we need grass.
I do have some bad news, though. There were some cans out today for tomorrow's trash, that I saw around my neighborhood.
No, they probably would have left that onto that, because the labor leaves at the, bottom of the driveway, the car.
I saw a couple of
These were out in the street. I mean, one was on my street.
That's the end of the big study.
The other thing too, that, like what you said, we may want to have somebody from Public Works go through the township and identify vacant homes. And then move those
working on that.
in. You already got it?
The trucks, fine, all four trucks, the two side loader and the rear loader truck is here, so 3 of that, and the one, all the trucks, the retrofit already for the rear loader application.
So just-
We're going along, and on the 17th, we'll be deciding maybe we're gonna start picking up the trash and recycling.
Okay, so just for everybody, my trash day is tomorrow. So I'm using the old cans and the old process tomorrow. Starting next Tuesday, I'll be on the automated system?
I'm sure, on the
So-
17th, yes.
Okay, because
Whatever you-
we are starting as of the 17th with the new trash cans. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, whenever you get this, when you're on, that's when you put your new cancer.
Okay.
It's just it's moving along, our guys are still training on it, they're getting pretty good at it. So by the time we're out and we're ready to start, we'll be very comfortable with the operating the trucks and how to maneuver around the national. Other than that, I don't have much else. All right.
Okay. Mr. Ball?
Two things, in response to our traffic complaints, Sergeant First Class Pearson is going to have the radar trailer out on Portion Tavern Road, be placed out there by the New Jersey State Police, Brookline Barracks. Also, we have a request from Strathmere Fire Company asking the township to draft a letter in reference to 4th of July for the closure of Commonwealth Avenue, that we're aware of it, and it needs to go to the freeholders so that they can, what do they need?
They actually draft a resolution
Go to a resolution. what they
to
need
close,
first.
to close the road for the 4th of July parade.
So is that a motion to allow the township to send a letter to the freeholders?
Motion to send a letter.
Second.
Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Colombo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
And one final note, apparently some feedback from the road department that there noticeable difference in the amount of cars that were parked on the street during the snow. So it looks like word got out, and I guess we'll have to put that on our to-do list every time we have a snow event.
Just to remind everyone further that, of course, as good as it did, it was still cars in the way, and Mike could tell you that it was kind of difficult to navigate around the cars. So we might, I don't know if there's an ordinance in place or not, we might want to do one, notify the residents to have the cars removed in snow emergency. If not,
There is one.
we'll ticket or
We probably have an ordinance, I think.
There is one.
And we want to make sure that we're out here, people know.
Because one of the problems is not everybody has a driveway, right?
The biggest problem is parking cul-de-sacs.
Yes. All that driveways, they should move the cars on all the streets. That makes it easy for us, and we don't have to worry about hitting them, or all that. We should put that on, every time there's snowstorm coming, or whatever, should put it on, online and, on the TV.
Okay, sir, that's all I have.
Okay, I just have one final thing to add to what was a very lively discussion this evening. I actually attended Congressman Lobiondo's press conference today over in Ocean City, and basically it was to address the House bill that was passed that will prorate the amount of percentage that flood insurance will increase. Currently, the National Flood Insurance Program is talking about a 25% increase on a yearly basis up to 100% over 4 years, which was a substantial amount of money for anyone that is certainly purchasing flood insurance, or any of our residents that live in Strathmere or on the Tuckahoe River, Harbor Road, etc. Anyway, the House has passed their version of it, which will increase somewhere between 5 and 14% versus the 25%. They feel that it'll be closer to 10%, the final bill. What's interesting about this, there was an additional congressman there, Congressman Chris Smith, who is from the Trenton area. He was there in support of it. They have already worked directly in a nonpartisan level with Senator Menendez and Senator Booker, our two New Jersey representatives on the Democratic side, to sponsor the bill on the Senate side. There's no assurance that the Senate will pass this exact version that the House passed, so then they'll have to go in what they call conference, so that they both have bills that match, and then ultimately, hopefully it'll pass both sides, and then for the president to sign. What's good about the bill that, and there's a little kudos to Congressman Lobiondo, is that it has two things built into it that are rather unique, and it may be the stumbling part on the Senate side. The first one is that there's a retroactivity allowance for those that have purchased a new home as of October 1st, where they're already subject to the new flood insurance rates. So if this bill moves forward and it's passed between the two houses and signed into law, then the individuals that have already paid the prorated amount at this point will be reimbursed. The second part of that is that the current property owner who sells their property will be able to transfer that 10-year abatement, I guess it would be, percentage abatement that gets up to the 100%. One of the issues that a number of homeowners and I guess even developers, real estate, whoever, that affects the overall economy of the Cape and certainly Atlantic County as well, anywhere along all Barrow Islands, and in fact not just New Jersey but pretty much all along every Barrow Island that goes east and west around the United States, was that if someone sold the house, the new owner would be subject to the new rates. The House bill that was passed allows for the transfer. So if this gets passed and it's a 10-year prorated, and you sell your house in, say, 4 or 5 years from now, there'll be still an additional 4 or 5 years of the prorate opportunity for the new homeowner to take advantage of. So there are two good things that are built into the House bill that was passed. But again, it's subject to the Senate version and going through that, and then also obviously being signed by the president so that it becomes statutory law. So I guess we passed a hurdle that was able to be passed in the House, but now we'll have to wait to see what the Senate does and take it from there. So more to follow on that, but I thought that was very good news that the process is at least moving forward, and that certainly our representatives are strong advocates for us on a bipartisan level, both Democrats and Republicans in our all our congressional districts, as well as our two U.S. senators are in support of this. That's all I have, so let's move on to the resolutions.
Under resolutions, honoring the memory of our friend Renee Schralka.
Yeah, go ahead, you can move the resolution, and I'll second it for discussion. Renee was a strong advocate for this township. She served on the planning board for 20 years. She was chair of the planning board for 16 of those 20 years. So her dedication to the township should be well noted. In fact, she was an active member. Thank you. That's worth an applause. Her membership really concluded up to the untimely passing of her last Saturday. So she was the chair and the active member of the planning board even as of this year. So I'd like to read the resolution just in her memory. So whereas the Upper Township Committee was deeply saddened to learn of the death of Renee Schralka, an inspiring individual who has served our community for the past 20 years by generously donating her time to numerous civic and charitable activities. Since 1994, Renee has been a member of the Upper Township Planning Board, where she was elected and served as chair of the board from 1998 until present, and where Renee also served as president of the Cape May County Bar Association from 1996 to 1997, and was actively involved in numerous charitable organizations. One in particular is the Atlantic City Rescue Mission. She spent a lot of weekends over there serving some of the unfortunate individuals. During her tenure as chairperson of the planning board, Renee, a practicing attorney, volunteered countless hours of knowledge and expertise, proactively guiding the township through the planning and development of the Marmora Town Center and Master Plan, and serving with tireless dedication through the long and arduous de-annexation petition. Renee will always be remembered for her service to others, which she undertook with utmost integrity, fairness, and professionalism. It is just and deserving that on behalf of the residents of Upper Township, we honor and celebrate the life of our colleague and friend Renee. Therefore be resolved that the Township Committee join with all citizens of our community to pay tribute to the life and service of Renee Schralka, and do hereby extend to Renee's family our most heartfelt sympathy for their loss, and the hope that they will be consoled by the memories of her life, of her fine life, and the achievements that she undertook. So I think it's very fitting that we honor her, and then it becomes a part of our record for eternity, as long as the township is in place. So, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 4, congratulating employee Brian Bashong of the Upper Township Department of Public Works for his winning entry in the Upper Township Safety Award Program for the first quarter of 2014.
Did you elaborate on that, Mayor?
I was going to ask what the award, I understand he won the award, but there's nothing in here that says what he did.
He reported the hazard of an unsecured manhole.
Okay.
Along Route 9.
Okay. So, would you like to move that resolution?
Move the resolution.
Second.
And for those in the audience, we have a quarterly recognition for those that identify areas of safety concerns, and it's fitting that we have this resolution to thank Brian for his recommendation. So would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 5, appointment of Thomas G. Smith, Esquire, to act as special legal counsel regarding matters in which the regular township solicitor may have a conflict of interest.
Move the resolution.
Second.
And Dan, you want to just elaborate on this for...
This is primarily for tax appeal matters. When we have a high volume of tax appeals, it's fairly common for there to be conflicts, such as relatives of township committee employees or whatnot, and when that occurs, we need an outside solicitor to handle those. And Mr. Smith obviously is very competent and has a lot of experience in tax appeals.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 6, authorizing the chief financial officer to withdraw funds not to exceed the amount of $35,000 from the account entitled Recycling Trust Account to pay for recycling collection equipment.
Move the resolution?
Second.
And this memorializes the discussion we had in the last meeting, so would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Authorizing a change order for the furnishing, curbside delivery and assembly of refuse containers contract resulting in an increase in the amount of $24,204.
Move the resolution.
Second.
And again, this memorializes what we discussed last week, but the reason why we're buying some additional cans, we're buying smaller cans for those that requested it. We'll be utilizing those, and then the larger ones we already have in place, we'll be selling to those households that have requested and will purchase an additional large can. So would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 8, approving the application of the Tuckahoe Volunteer Fire Company for highway cleanups.
Move the resolution.
Second.
And could you call the roll, please? This memorializes from the last meeting.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 9, approving the application of the Upper Township Rescue Squad for highway coin drops.
Move the resolution.
Second?
Same thing as last one. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 10, grant agreement between Upper Township and the State of New Jersey by and for the Department of Environmental Protection for the 2013 Green Communities Grant.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Just to make you aware, you probably already are if you read the materials, this does require a $3,000 match by the township in in-kind services or cash.
This is for the forestry grant that we had previously talked about, and most of it will be, the in-kind services will be from myself and volunteer in-kind services.
Okay. So would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 11, under ordinances, introduction and first reading of ordinance number 3, 2014, an ordinance vacating a portion of Mistletoe Avenue adjacent to portions of Block 508 and Block 497 within the Township of Upper County of Cape May, the State of New Jersey.
Okay. And this is an introduction to the ordinance, and the public will be able to comment on this at the scheduled public hearing. When we make the motion, we'll come up with the date. So,
On the 14th, April 14th.
would someone like to make a motion to introduce this ordinance? Second. And basically, this is a vacation of a portion of a street that had been requested by some township residents. Would you call the roll, please?
And one other thing, with public hearing on April 14th.
April 14th, thank you.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 12, introduction and first reading of ordinance number 4, 2014, bond ordinance amending bond ordinance number 15, 2013 of the Township of Upper in the County of Cape May, New Jersey, finally adopted December 16, 2013, in order to amend Section 1 and Section 2, which appropriates $3,748,000 and authorizes bond or notes in the amount of $3,560,600 for various capital improvements.
Would someone like to make a motion to introduce this revision of the bond?
I'll make the motion.
All right, we have a first, is there a second? You know what, I'll make a second just so we can discuss this if we want to move forward with the introduction. So, is there any discussion?
This time we just introduce the budget. It's nothing that I want to expand.
Would you call the roll, please?
And again, with public hearing for this on April 14th.
It's going to be a very busy public hearing meeting.
Yes, it will be. Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 13, introduction and first reading of ordinance number 5, 2014, amending revised general ordinance, chapter 24 of the Code of Upper Township for the solid waste and recyclables.
Move the resolution.
It's, move the ordinance introduction. I just want to point out before we second it and move forward, there were, and I gave them to you before the meeting, a black line copy, just some wordsmithing changes. Nothing of substance was changed from our prior discussions. So there are some minor language changes. There was primarily it was a distinction in definition between containers and carts that was changed.
Okay, I'll second it with the notation that the public hearing will be held on April the 14th.
On March 24th, actually, for this. I'm sorry.
We want to get this one in as the program started.
Short public comment period. All right, call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is
Here,
carried.
I thought I finally learned the lesson here.
Item number 14, introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6, 2014, an ordinance amending revised general ordinance, chapter 8, animal control of the Code of Upper Township.
Yeah, and this introduction of this ordinance really will address the need to care for our animals during very inclement weather, which, especially since we experienced this winter. We certainly understand that individuals, in fact, my dogs go out and run around outside in the backyard and stuff. But the idea here is to not leave dogs unprotected, animals, pets unprotected, and be exposed to the extreme temperatures, both heat and cold. And so that's why we are following some of the asks of our current animal control officer and really taking that in consideration so that animals are well cared for in this township. So. And I know, Mr. Barr, you've worked directly with our animal control officer, and this was certainly his suggestion that we look at this. Would you like to make the motion to introduce it?
Second.
And what date?
April 14th.
I'm not shocked. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 15, under correspondence, is the 2013 GIF Safety Incentive Program Award.
Okay, so we have some real good safety officers. Some of the individuals that Jeff recognized was Terry Smuzz, who is our safety, our fund commissioner. They individually recognized Jay Potter, a safety coordinator, and basically recognized all of our employees for having a very safe year and making some great recommendations for the township. So because of that, it's kind of like an opportunity to thank our employees. We've been given a $1,250, I guess, stipend from Jeff to be used to for our employees, to thank them for helping in many ways to keep our insurance costs down. The question is I guess we have to determine what we want to do with it. That's why it's on here, or what are we determined that?
They just ask that we recognize the employees for their safety
I mean,
contributions.
in the past, we've purchased some shirts and clothing for folks with this money. I guess we could...
Provide breakfast or lunch sometimes to the employees as a thank you for being safe.
I mean, I can leave it up to you guys. I certainly think that, maybe breakfast is the way to go. We can do everybody, or...
Usually our fund commissioner and our safety coordinator usually make
I'm going
recommendations.
to leave it up to the safety committee that have been recognized for the good work, and you guys feel free to make suggestions. You want to come up, Chief Potter, and tell us, you have an idea?
Jay Potter, the safety coordinator
in the past, we've decided to use that money for the health and safety day.
Okay.
It funds that day, so we'll get with Terry and find out how much of that we're gonna use to fund that day again.
And that's usually in the fall?
Yes. And,
October.
Community Center.
Okay. So then, I guess that from a protocol question, Dan, do we need to vote to accept that, or are we just comfortable that?
As long as it's part of the department and it's a routine purchase within our purchase policy, I don't think you need to unless you want to give specific direction to someone.
No, I'm comfortable with doing that. Yep. Okay. But thank you to all. And please acknowledge to the safety committee, our committee extends our gratitude for the good work.
Okay, item number 16, under new business, Stacy Smith, request for street light on Kildare Hill Road in Petersburg.
Okay?
And motion to approve with S3 is very bad, in my view.
All right, so we have a first and a second. We usually go to our engineer who takes a look at it.
Well, there's a little inaccuracy in her statement. First, she says there's no streetlights on her street. There's actually 3 streetlights on her road, and her property is actually within 150 feet of the closest streetlight. Typically, that street, meets the right ordinance requirements for streetlights. Excuse me? No, that's Nordic and North Meadowview.
Okay, sorry.
So we're within the code right now, what's required for street lighting?
On that street, yes. Because it doesn't have sidewalks, typically if a street has sidewalks on it, there's additional street lighting provided a little more frequently, but on most of the streets without sidewalks, you're located at intersections, cul-de-sac areas, or sharp curves where there's a safety concern for the traveling public.
With the lights that's present here, we're just in conjunction to the other lights.
Let's just say, her property towards, it's about 150 feet from one side, and it's about 400 feet to the next light.
So,
And about 240, 300 feet is the standard when we space them within a neighborhood.
so wait, what was that space?
Space, about 140 to 300 feet, depending on the neighborhood.
And so did you just say the next light was 400 feet away?
And on one side is 400 feet, the other side is 150 feet.
So it's 250.
Correct.
So there's a line within the 100 feet.
Excuse me?
There's a line within the 100 feet.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, I don't think about getting another drawing, that's pretty broad.
I mean, we can go out and check to make sure that it's lit. If she doesn't feel that there's a light there, maybe the light's out and doesn't realize that there is a light there.
Well, I'm good at first.
You'd have to withdraw your motion in second if you want to do something.
Yeah, I thought it was down the street.
Maybe we would table this until such time that we can go out and just determine that it does meet the...
I did.
Okay, so it does meet the minimum criteria?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and just, again, for some of the new folks, what we've done in the past, I mean, we have asked Paul every time we have a request for streetlight to go out and measure based on our codes. And there has been times where we haven't always agreed with Paul just because, we have noticed those dark areas and some, intersections and those kind of things. Because sometimes the code just doesn't give us the lighting that we need. But for the most part, we have asked the engineer to go out and measure and see where we are. So, and we do certainly take his recommendation more times than we don't. Okay, so it doesn't mean, but if you prefer to table it until the next meeting, that's fine with me too. If that's what, because it sounds like we had some confusion on what street it
Yeah, I
was.
thought it was another drawing, that one, it is a legal bad, but it's just lining.
Okay, so, I mean, if you would like to go, because, we always have the opportunity to go and look at the street ourselves. And so, if you would like to do that,
You're going to withdraw them, Tony?
So whoever made the motion second, or withdrawing the motion second?
okay, so we have to withdraw and put it as unfinished business for the next meeting, please.
Any clarification, Paul, what's the cost of a street light?
The last one required to be installed, I think, was like $1,200 to be installed. Not including the... And the curb.
That was on Greenville, wasn't it?
I mean,
No, that was Ocean Avenue.
right. But I don't want to create the impression that we're turning people down. We certainly take everything into full consideration, and in fact, many times Paul's recommendation is to put a street light there. Sometimes it's because the developer took time to finish the project. Sometimes the developer should have put a light there, and we have to go back and figure out why they didn't and pursue other means to recapture. But we also rely on, his expertise to say where it needs to be based on measurements that are put in place from the code. So.
Okay. Under discussion, item number 17, we have the 2014 scheduled regular meeting dates.
Yeah, I asked, based on the conflicts that have occurred, to look at whether or not it made sense for us to consider the first and third Mondays in an effort that, we could have no conflict in board meetings. And as it appears at this point, the only meeting going forward where there's a conflict from henceforth is in April, right? Because April, I think they have a meeting scheduled for whatever reason on the 27th. Am I correct for that?
April 28th.
28th, okay. I don't know what that, my calendar says it's 20, okay, anyway. Oh, 28th is the Tuesday because of Memorial. No, why would it be Tuesday? According to this, it's that 28th is a Tuesday. Am I reading this wrong? Oh, I am reading it wrong. Okay, Monday's the 28th, I'm sorry. So, the only day that there's a conflict for the rest of the year is April 28th.
As far as I'm talking about the school board meetings,
Right.
this will be the only time that we can put it with us, is that correct?
Correct. That we asked them to supply us with a copy of their schedule, and they have double stars on the dates that are out of their normal third Monday when they meet. And the only one that I could see going forward where there's a conflict is April 28th.
This time, for the remainder of the year, there's no need to change anything.
Exactly. Now, we can probably do a better job next year trying to schedule between budget hearings and our meeting. Maybe we can work with them a little closer, moving forward to go through maybe February and March so that we don't have some of the conflicts that have arisen. But to change our schedule at this point, I think probably makes no sense because we've
There's only
been...
one, right, there's only one that we put in, yes.
Okay, so, we certainly took the recommendation and the ask and did the research, and that's what we came up with, so. So is everybody comfortable that we're going to stay with the second and fourth Mondays for the time being? Okay. I don't think we need to take any vote because we're already there anyway. All right. Would someone like to make a motion to pay the bills?
I hereby move that all claims submitted for payment at this meeting be approved and then incorporated into the minutes of this meeting.
Second?
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
There are a number of reports from the municipal departments, construction code, clerk's office, animal control, tax assessor, tax collector, Department of Public Works, zoning board annual report. All of those reports will be available tomorrow upon request at the municipal clerk's office. And I would like to make a motion to accept those reports.
Second?
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, before you go forward, I do want to point out that is the annual report of the zoning board, and there are some issues that they ask, maybe that either the planning board and/or the township committee address some ordinance changes. I would suggest that annual report be forwarded to the planning board with a request that they review those ordinance change requests and report back to the township committee as to what their opinions are on those issues. I think
Okay,
one
so
of
do we
them,
need a motion to move that forward?
I would ask, you don't need a formal resolution, but a motion and a second and a vote
I'll
would be
make a
good.
motion that we forward it to the planning board.
Second.
Okay, would you call the roll, please? Unless, I'm sorry, is there any discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay, at this time, we've come to the public comment portion. If anyone would like to address the township committee, now's the time to do it. We'd ask that you come up and state your name and your address because you will be recorded, video recorded as part of the record. Yes, please. Right by the microphone. Yep.
My name is Roberta Townsend. It's nice to see you guys tonight. I haven't been here for 4 years, since my husband died.
It's nice to see you too.
Dan, the two Barbaras, they're like old friends, and they're there. As you know, I broke down a lot, but I tried to get my point across. And before I start, I have a question, Dan. Why aren't any of the police here tonight?
The police?
Yeah, they used to come to the meetings.
They come occasionally when they have reports or if there's an issue that involves them. To my knowledge, there was nothing for them to be here at the meeting.
Wow, that's a lot to say to me. Do you know how many times I've had the police to my house in the last 4 years, 5 years? Probably 25 times for thefts in my house. 25 times minimum. Just a week ago, there was a police break-in, and police were there. I think they think I'm nuts, but you know, when all your jewelry's gone, and your life is at stake, and people come in and steal things, and you don't know whether you're going to be alive today or tomorrow, that's serious stuff. That's number one. I haven't been to the meetings in a while, so I have to sort of catch up. And as I said, I may cry on you, and I don't give speeches, but I will say welcome to the two guys that are here. And Mayor is really, Dan, really nice to see you still here. They've always done a good job. And so I have a couple questions. Well, maybe not so many questions, maybe statements to make. I've lived here since, I think it was around 1963 or 64 we moved here, and I have 4 children. One was born, maybe 2 were born in Ocean City, and the other 2 were born here. I was one of the first ones that was ever asked to run emergency management because nobody knew emergency management when it was started here. And I was part of the Ways and Means for the school children, the schools here. So I was called by Betty Johnson and asked to start this thing. And I had 4 children, so I had to make a big decision. I liked doing it. I was always involved with everything, but your children, your family come first. And they were so little, I just didn't think I could spread myself out that far. So, but when anybody asked if I could help, I helped. And along the way with church and anything else that came along. I did prepare a speech, but there's a couple things I do want to go over because I was out having dinner and I just decided to come tonight because I wanted to hear about the trash cans. Well, I told the other day about the trash cans. I have 2 really bad rotator cuffs. I do all my yard work myself. My husband used to help me when he was alive, and it's gotten worse over the years, and heard all kinds of crazy things about these trash cans, but I've been sick a lot in the last couple of years, so I couldn't make meetings. So I called last week about the trash cans, and I said, I have bad rotator cuffs, so just bring me 2 small ones. I can't have any big ones. And well, they said, we'll bring what we have, and then you can change them. So lo and behold, on Sunday, I think it was, trash cans arrived. Do you know those trash cans are bigger than I am? I'm 100 pounds. I have gone down from 130 pounds in 2 years to 100 pounds. with 2 bad rotator cuffs. How do you expect me to take those trash cans to my garage and back? I think not. So
So would you like to have smaller ones sent to your house and exchange them?
they said, well, we have to deliver, we have to deliver this. How much money did it cost the township for those stupid trash cans and the big tractor trailer that brought them down the street the other day? You know, this is insane. I mean, I lived in Florida in winters for many years, and they have trash cans that wide and that high for the people in Florida. The seniors, us old seniors can handle it. Now, I'm a young senior, but I have physical problems. So, I think somebody is totally out of line with what happened here, and God knows what it cost this township. And then there's the issue of all these thefts.
But before we move on, because I want to make sure you're asking questions, do you want to be put on the list to switch your cans to smaller cans?
I certainly do.
Okay,
They
so
said,
we'll make sure.
I asked for it before, why did they deliver them and have to come back? and
Well, there were a number of individuals, and maybe you missed it, you know, based on whatever, that sent in a request for smaller ones, and there were many smaller cans that were delivered while the bigger cans were being delivered as well. So, you know, we're trying to adjust for some of the individuals that need some smaller cans. So if that's your question that you're trying to ask, then we'll make sure that that happens.
Well, I sure hope so, because I'm not going to get those trash cans anywhere.
Okay.
As I say, they're not only as big as I am, but empty, I can't move them. They're sitting where they delivered them the other day because I can't move them.
Okay.
Okay, that's great. This police situation is a serious thing. Serious, serious, serious. I'm scared that I'm going to be killed tonight.
Well,
I can't stand it. Somebody's coming to my house and robbing me blind, jewelry, furs, anything. We can't go on like this anymore.
Have you reported this to the sheriff?
Do something about a better police department. They come out and look around and think you're nuts. I live by myself.
okay.
After the meeting, I'm in charge of public safety, ma'am. After the meeting,
He's in charge, he's a liaison for the Committee for Public Safety.
I'm the liaison with the state police.
Well, somebody better do something because one of these mornings you'll find me dead in bed.
Well-
I had furs stolen, I've had jewelry stolen, I've had my china stolen at Christmas. 4.5 years this has been going on.
After the meeting, if it would help, I'll meet with you outside, and I'll get your information, and I'll have Sergeant First Class Pearson personally reach out to you and discuss with you what your concerns would be. Would that be sufficient?
It's fine. If they can do anything.
Oh, most definitely, I'm sure that the New Jersey State Police will be able to handle your matter.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the Township Committee? Yes?
Ted Kingston, Stratford. I just wanted to thank you for looking at the schedule of the school board. The reason I brought that up, I guess about a month ago, was the conflict, because the nights the budgets were being discussed here, they were also being discussed at the school.
Yeah, and you know what, Ted, what's interesting about it is I was always the impression that it was the third Monday, and ironically, other than during the budget period, it is the third Monday. So I think we should be able to work together with them and coordinate it better, I guess is the word I'm looking for, so that there isn't conflict, so that if you have an interest in hearing both workshops, and obviously you do, as other individuals seem to as well, that we do that in a way that will accommodate the residents. And I think we should be able to handle that. It was, you know, and honestly, we had a very frank discussion about considering switching our meetings from first and third. One of the issues that we had to address is when there's 5 Mondays, it really creates a gap for us. like almost a month between meetings. So we were trying to look at how we can, Barbara and I looked at some different scheduling scenarios. You know, if we switched it for whatever reason, can we do one to the third, you know, how would we make it work? But rather than confuse the issue, when I saw that really there's only one final conflict for the rest of the year, I certainly think that we can stay where we are and do a better job working, coordinating in the future for next year. So.
And that kind of leads into, you know, the reason attending these meetings and all. I thought the discussion tonight was very interesting, and I think all points of view are valid here. You know, one of the things with local government, maybe this is obvious for you guys, but the part of local government, the programs are worthwhile. The rec programs are worthwhile. You know, other things that have been discussed, the zoning board is worthwhile. But from the other side, I mean, between the township and the school board, there's $1 million tax increases. And somehow there has to be a balance of the two. I mean, I think both sides of the argument in this one are valid. And I don't have an answer, but I mean, that's my observation. I think it's a good argument to have.
We'll work and try and find out, come up with a good solution for both.
That's all I have.
We appreciate your comments. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Russell Ryan, 5 Meadow Drive. Ditto to a lot of what Taylor said. One thing on that meeting of the 28th for the school board is the one that the budget's going to be presented to the public.
Well, the good news is our budget will be the meeting before that, so there won't be conflict there. Yeah, there's conflict with the meeting, but we're actually having our budget approval on April 14th, so if you want to be to that public hearing, it won't conflict with ours. So we looked at that, because that was the one, you know, we were thinking about it, but quite frankly, that falls right in the Easter break for some folks and not for some folks. And so I wanted to make sure, or I'm sorry, if we switched it, we would get into the Easter break on our side with, you know, some folks that may or may not be able to make
I
it.
just wanted to note that the 28th was for their budget, you know, $35 million, and so to me it's very important, and you're missing another week, but at least I appreciate what you're trying to do and get it squared away. The other thing I'd like to say is, you notice here a couple times it was asked that people speak a little louder. Now, I believe these mics are mainly to tape, they're not really to put through speakers. Can anything be done to get a couple of speakers? Because it is kind of rough. I sit there trying to hear, that's why I used to always sit in front here, but it is, some people talk very low, and other people like John and yourself, Mayor, you project very well. So it's still kind of hard to hear. So if you could do something to look at speakers.
Well, we have been working with them. Ed, our IT man, has been working with us. Mike Jones has been working with us. We're trying to ascertain, you know, why there is such an issue with hearing. You know, the microphones, we had some issues where it runs with another department, the court department, and we've had some issues. We're trying to balance it. We do realize that there's potential issues. This hall was built so that it was supposed to have decent acoustic. Right. For whatever reason, some of the areas, depending on what side you sit at and where you're at, you know, makes it easier. I you know, kind of speak loud to begin with, so it's probably a little bit, you know, unfair to say you can hear me. It's not that my microphone's better than the other ones. It's just that, you know, I have a tendency, because I speak a lot, to do that.
It's kind of rough, because you're speaking inward, not outward, so it's a little hard. Really, there's something around, something to note. The other thing, what is being done in town so far about getting, to lower these taxes, to get some tax ratables? Is there anything large out there coming up, or anything we're looking at to try and get this tax base built up?
Well, we have a master plan in place that allows us to have some potential construction and development in our town centers, or designated town centers. Prior to some of the, and this is going back pretty far, I mean, you know, we had some issues with the recession, we had some issues with potential developers that pulled out. There was interest by a couple major department stores, but they actually cut some of their development out. So I will admit at this point, it's been somewhat stale, as it were. We haven't really gotten anything of interest. However, having said that, there has been some inquiries from some outside attorneys that represent some developers that have some interest in it. And, you know, we were very fortunate to have the ShopRite go in, we were very fortunate to have the CVS go in. And I'm not saying that the other businesses that have been added they're also very important as well. But those big facilities and the ability to be able to build those type of facilities into the township really increase ratables rather quickly. And, you know, it's our hope that at some point, we're going to realize that. We've made some changes to our ordinances that allow for higher-rise hotel, as it were, which potentially could ultimately help this township. And the reason for that is we're also, and I know this is something that seems weird, but part of the development of some of these town centers is the ability to build restaurants that can serve alcohol. And we are limited based on population. We're maxed out. We're not going to be able to get any more liquor licenses based on the current formula that the state utilizes. One of the ways of offsetting that is to bring in a 100-unit hotel. Maybe we envision somewhere back by the Parkway or something that could service not only us, but certainly the Barrier Islands. You know, I do travel with my job, and quite frankly, I don't always stay right on top of where my meeting is. It might be 10 miles out because it's, you know, more affordable and more reasonable. And that's what we envision, you know, maybe something like Hampton Inn or a Courtyard by Marriott. I don't know if it'll ever become a reality, but our ordinance says that could happen.
I'm looking at the other end. Instead of the spending end, I'm looking at the taking in.
Well, so are we, because that makes a big difference. And on top of that, we are also obviously prioritizing the need to refocus on that South Jersey gas pipeline.
That's my other question.
I actually had a conversation today with the new assemblyman, Sam Fiocchi, about it. I've had numerous conversations with Senator Van Drew about it. There's, you know, I don't think it's any secret that in the media, he's come out in support of the pipeline and asked for the Pinelands Commission to come up with reconsideration. I'm not at liberty to tell you what South Jersey Gas is doing, but I can assure you that they're looking at other opportunities. I don't think this thing's dead in the water, but this Township Committee is committed to try and make that thing a reality, because that is by far our biggest issue right now.
Well, you know, you brought up, that was my next item here. I am extremely disappointed to keep seeing these letters from certain people of the organizations against this pipeline. It's something that's very well needed. This town needs that tax rate, but also, if anything happens to this electric plant now the way it is, what do they want? You know, to me, they had coal, they didn't want coal. So good, there's a way now to at least get half the bait of what you want. Now they go ahead, they don't want that. What do they want? A nuclear plant sitting out here? I don't want that here.
Well, the reality is, there's two things to look at this. One, the Oyster Creek nuclear plant's about ready to close down very shortly. Okay, and we have experienced energy grid unreliability, especially when they hit peak times during heat waves and those kind of things with brownouts. And there is a need for affordable generation of electricity. Whether we like it or not, people use electric all the time. We have our laptops on, the lights are on, you know, and even those that have an environmentally passion to prevent things from happening, drive their cars to the meetings, you know, and use their electronic means to do research and those kind of things. So I'm not trying to be critical of those individuals, but what I'm trying to say is beyond the ratables that come to this township, which by far we need dramatically to continue, okay? There's jobs that are available to it. There's an opportunity to change that plant, to make it run for the next 25 years and convert it to certainly a much more efficient and cleaner opportunity with gas. And by the way, that plant will operate and generate a lot more electricity if the generators are changed to that, which would offset some of those grid potential problems that we could have. It will generate jobs in the construction of the pipeline and the generator. It will have that reliability for electricity, and then also build into the plan is a reliability for the gas lines that are already been antiquated that service Cape May County. And so I will tell you that the freeholders are in support of it. This committee is fully committed to it, state legislators are fully committed to it, so we have the governmental agencies all aligned to work together.
Well, yeah, the thing to read is that the commission that voted it down, no, they didn't vote it down, it was a 7-7, it was an even split, because one guy, Cal, or whatever you want to call him, didn't want to make his vote. So
No, that's not true. In fairness to that individual, he was asked to step down by the state attorney general
That's,
because of a conflict.
well, the conflict that it is, it's still not a solid vote down.
Right.
It's not a solid vote.
I'm not saying I'm the final answer, but I just think it's important that you know the facts, you know? I went to many of those meetings, and I went to the meeting that they asked him to step down and recuse himself, so.
Yeah, the whole thing here is that I see it's something that is well needed, it should be here. When you see what happens when the power is out for even a half a day, everybody goes crazy. Now you go into a week. How would you like to have it, that thing goes down totally? Now we're in trouble.
There's a television program called Revolution that's on right now where the electric's out forever. And it's just, I'm not saying that that's a reality, but, you know, it's interesting to watch and consider, especially with what we're going through now.
I just hope some people see the real big picture of it all. We need it.
I agree.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, we thank you for your input, and thank you for staying through the meeting. We wish you all a good week, and at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Coggins to read a statement so that we can go into closed session.
I hereby move that a resolution be incorporated into the minutes authorizing the Township Committee to enter into an executive session for the following matters pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act. Matters, number 1, personnel. I also included in my motion the estimated time and circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public as follows. It is anticipated that the matters discussed in closed session may be disclosed to the public upon the determination of the Township Committee that the public interest will no longer be served by such confidentiality. With respect to employment personnel matters, such discussions will be made public if and when formal action is taken or when the individuals involved consent that it can be made public. I'd also like to add to that a 5-minute break to allow Mr. Barr an opportunity to confer with Mrs. Townsend regarding her issue that he volunteered to take her information.
Okay, second, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank you all, have a great evening.